connection with the University of Pretoria for quite a long number of years. When they invited me, I was quite impressed by the fact that they invited me to become an extraordinary professor of the University of Pretoria. And then I discovered that extraordinary professor is not as important as ordinary professor. Certainly there's no salary and no real commitment, other than when I'm in South Africa, that I might go there and talk to the wonderful students who are studying a master's course in human rights and also in the study of AIDS. And so last night I travelled to Pretoria to the new Freedom Monument. At least it's new to me, I think, but it's also on a high hill, and it was so cold as we went from the car to the actual place where the event was taking place. Thankfully, the first thing I was given was a glass of port, which I took with great pleasure. And so before I spoke about with these students, not all of them South African, some of them from the Congo, some of them from Swaziland, from Uganda, in Pretoria, and it was very encouraging. But back to the Irish-South African connection. I've been aware that Irish people have been coming to South Africa, and you made the case very well with street names, etc., for a very long number of years, and intensively, I think, over the last while. So I think it's very important that BISA is existing and vibrant and expanding, and that BISA goes beyond the pure business community. I mean, there's proof at my table that it's not all business people who are here. But I think it's nice that there is this venue where you can get together. And I think the real connections between Ireland and South Africa are extraordinarily deep. They were personified in that friend that was referred to, Kader Asmal. Kader taught Nick and myself law in Trinity, and then I did join with him in the anti-apartheid movement, and then the Council of Civil Liberties in Ireland. And when I came here on a state visit and addressed the Parliament of South Africa, and Nelson Mandela was actually sitting in as president for that meeting, Kader got very excited introducing me. And at one point he said, "We Irish!" and caused a great deal of amusement. Who knows him knows. He can be extraordinarily funny, and you don't see it coming. And I remember so well that we didn't see it coming when he got up to formally welcome me as the incoming head of state who was there on the state visit. And he said at a certain point, and I'm not going to imitate his voice, which is, you all know it well, imagine it. And he said, "We know that President Mary Robinson had the honour and privilege of being lectured by Professor Kader Asmal, now our Minister for Water and Forestry. And we know that her husband, Nicholas Robinson, had the honour and privilege of being lectured by Professor Kader Asmal, as we now in Cabinet have the honour and privilege." The whole room burst out laughing, because all his cabinet were there, and spouses and advisors and everybody. And Kader came up afterwards and said, "Oh, but President Madiba, I don't lecture." And he said, "Kader, you heard the reaction." Poor Kader, a little bit chastened by that. But the affection and the way in which he could tell that story. But actually, it also was an indication of the friendship at that time which has endured between Ireland and South Africa, because it was a state visit with no real issues of contention or dispute. It was a state visit to recognise that the two countries were friends then and would remain friends, and I'm glad to say continue to have that very strong friendship. So I really wish you very well in BISA, in Business Ireland, and I hope that you will actually widen the circle still further, because I'm sure there are, when you complete your data base, that there are others who would love to be involved in BISA here and in Cape Town, and knowing Brendan, perhaps other venues that he'll think about to support you on. And if anybody would like to ask any questions or anything, I'd be very happy to answer. I'm going, as you heard, to Soweto after this. I also had an opportunity after the talk in Cape Town to go to Guguletho, to a school there that was receiving a library, and to meet with some of the children there. And before that, I went to the foundation of the Mandela Rhodes Scholars And that for me was extraordinarily impressive, to see these young South African scholars. Not only were they extraordinarily impressive in the range of studies that they were doing. Sorry, I'll just take a... Not only were they very impressive in the studies they were doing at master's level, in everything from high physics to cello music or whatever, but it's just a wonderful range, but it was their commitment. And they started to ask me questions about the night before, the Mandela lecture. The first question I was asked was why I had sounded a bit apologetic. And I said, oh no, I wasn't apologetic, I was diplomatic. But, you know, it was a lovely sense, because they were absolutely determined that the South Africa that they're going to work for is going to be a South Africa that truly carries through the vision of Nelson Mandela. So that gave me great hope for the future of the country, because I think there is a generation coming up that is determined to live by the great strengths of the Constitution, the Rainbow Nation that they want to continue to build. So I've really enjoyed so far this visit. It's not over yet. At lunchtime we'll have another Women's Day lunch, and then eventually I'll get to the airport this evening and fall asleep immediately. But thank you very much, and as I say, Cogordigus live, as an give. I really want to encourage you, and when I come back again, maybe I'll come back and say hello if it coincides with when you're meeting. But if anybody'd like to ask any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. Thank you very much. It was very reassuring to me, because there was a good deal of risk maybe in speaking to about 1,200 people in that large city hall. And it was a very warm reaction, and really instantly I could tell that I'd kind of, in a way, tapped into a mood. And my niece, who follows the blogosphere and the social media world, tells me that there's been a very positive reaction. I actually asked her to particularly track the negatives, and she told me yesterday she hasn't found any yet, so maybe she has by now, but she hadn't yesterday. Now, I think there has been a very good reaction, and I was very pleased that it came up with the students yesterday, last night in Pretoria, and yesterday at the lunch. The reaction seemed to be very positive. So I think what I was saying was what people are thinking but maybe not saying as much. And what I was doing was encouraging that South Africa is in a situation of marking special anniversaries this year, and should perhaps take stock and begin to reinvent itself, as the modern Ireland is needing to reinvent itself in the light of our own fall into a bailout situation, and have to fight back now and come out of that, and we are showing that resilience. So I think they took the message as encouraging. In fact, I was told on a radio program I did yesterday morning, before we started on the actual interview, the interviewer said, I just want to tell you that around here what we think about what you said is that it was tough love. And I thought that was a lovely phrase, tough love. So that's what I wanted to come across.
Thank you very much, Mary. Nice question. Thanks, John.
Motivated, are in school, that the unions understand the importance of education, that the whole system, that schools have the resources, the textbooks, etc., etc. If that's right, I think the future, it's the way to go, because those young people who are getting a quality of education are the Rhodes Scholar type that I was meeting yesterday, the Rhodes Mandela Scholar students. They want to change South Africa. I met two other young women yesterday at the lunch, whom I had met when I came here with the elders, and we met with about 70 young people, not just from South Africa, but from Southern Africa. And these two young women were part of it. One of them is from Uganda, and another is from South Africa. And they're full of a passion about not just South Africa, but the continent. And they want to change things for the better. And I think a lot of young people on this continent, if they get a chance, have that sense of commitment to their country and to their continent. And I think that's what we want to see more of, that opportunity of education. And not just getting into a school, but quality of education and staying in education, particularly for girls.
Thank you. And I think education resonates.
The other country, apart from my own, that I have a particular love for, in fact. And therefore I follow the news, and I think there is a sense that this is not a good time, that politically there are real problems, and that there is a need to take stock of that. One of the things, and you give me the opportunity to talk about it, to show off about it in a way, because after all I am an elder, I'm very interested in the potential of social media now to hold governments and local authority and corporations and everybody to account. And I used an example of an internet platform that I learned about quite recently called Ushahidi. And it was started by bloggers in Kenya when there was the violence after the election in Kenya. They wanted to repurpose Google Maps for Kenya to be able to show where the violence was. It grew into a huge website, a huge opportunity to do a whole lot of tracking about diseases and crises, etc. And I was intrigued to learn, and mentioned in my talk, that a local authority in Ireland is using it to track potholes. What local authority is it, do you think? I was having bets on Cavan or Monaghan, to be honest. It's actually South Dublin. But I actually said to the students last night in the University of Pretoria, I said, if you can track potholes, what else can you track? You can track when the police stop you and improperly look for a bribe. You can track when teachers don't turn up in school. You can track acts of violence, even domestic violence, and you can do it anonymously. And you can begin to map and make visible. And I think that's one of the ways in which every country, hopefully, is going to have to become more accountable. I would say that once South Dublin is tracking potholes, other local authorities will be doing the same in Ireland and tracking more than that. So I quoted in my speech on Sunday in Cape Town that famous passage from Eleanor Roosevelt: if human rights are to matter at all, they must matter in small places close to home. And then that ends with, if human rights are to matter in essence, it will take, and this is her words, concerted citizen action. And that's the message that I was really trying to put across, both on Sunday and in other talks that I've been giving here, that in the 21st century, citizenship also means responsibilities of concerted citizen action, responsibilities of duties to the community, responsibility of doing something, engaging. And that one of the things my South African friends have been telling me is that a lot of South African society is not engaged in the way it should be. It's sort of almost given up on the fact that the politics are the way they are. And so I think the message is to really engage and to use social media to make a difference, to actually change the power dynamic a bit by making visible the things that are not acceptable, and making visible the lack of quality of services, lack of quality of educational services where they should be, and by doing that, put much more pressure on for good change. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. And I think we can call it's apathy that is taken.
And Lamini Zuma was mentioned. She's the first woman president of the African Union. Great, but what about the women who are both suffering from situations that are difficult, but also actors for change in their local communities? And I did reference that in my speech on Sunday. I pointed out a gender study of South Africa that had been carried out in 2009 by the African Development Bank, which very much made the point that women are represented in the parliament and in cabinet and in quite a notable way, but that there are not the policies that would support and encourage and make visible. And actually I got a lovely quote last night. If I may, I'm just going to